Hi there, you're listening to the Estranged Heart Podcast, and I'm your host, Kreed Revere. Welcome back to our returning listeners, and if this is your first time here, thank you for selecting this podcast to listen to. As we begin today's episode, I invite you to grab a cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and listen with an open heart. But first, the regular disclaimer. I am not a licensed therapist or counselor. Nothing within this podcast should be considered or taken as therapy. If you are in need of therapeutic support such as counseling, please seek out a therapist near you. Welcome everyone. I hope that you like this new format and setup for season 2 of the Estranged Heart Podcast. As most of you know, we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary and on October 31st of 2022. And so we are off to season number 2. And before we begin with the first episode of this brand new season, I wanted to just make a couple of announcements. First of all, thank you to those of you who continue to support this podcast in a variety of ways. From sharing the podcast with others, I talk to people, get emails with people almost on a daily basis who find this podcast in places I've never even heard of. So I'm super grateful for those of you who believe in the message of the Estranged Heart and that you're willing to share it with others. I am also grateful for those of you who continue to support this podcast financially. I thank you for that. It again helps to free up some of my time, and looking forward to hopefully being able to bring on a producer here soon, maybe in 2023, and your financial contributions will help that and help me be able to focus more on the parts and pieces of the podcast that I do well at and the parts that I enjoy the most, and that is interviewing and doing the research and bringing the information to you. So thank you. And the second announcement really is this season we will have many more interviews with estranged parents, and I am hopeful estranged adult children. And the first one of these will be next week's episode on the 13th of November. We will have an interview with a formerly estranged and now reconciled adult child. And it's by far one of the most favorite interviews I have done, and I think the wisdom and insight that this person brings to the table is phenomenal. It's an interview not to be missed, and so be sure to tune in on the 13th and hear AC's story. So on with our episode today, and a couple of quotes to begin as we normally do. The first is, "To love is to let go of your entire heart, fully aware that you will not get it back in the same condition." And that is by C.W. Poet. Second is, "We are evolving as parents from," quote, "you better love and respect me," end quote, to, quote, "I hope you feel loved and respected by me," end quote. And that is by @responsive parenting, but on Instagram. And the last one is, "Heal the root so the tree is stable," and that is by Unknown. So today's episode is titled "The Holidays and Estrangement: Surviving the Holidays as an Estranged Parent and or Adult Child." And as you know, here we are in November and approaching Thanksgiving and Hanukkah and Christmas and New Year's and all of the major holidays that we tend to spend the most time with family. because of that, the holidays are some of the most difficult times for those people who are estranged. And so I wanted to kind of dive into this a little bit. I'm hoping that maybe something that I discussed today will help you as you begin to traverse this land, especially if this is your first year of estrangement and you're walking into this and not sure what to do, how to navigate things, or you've been estranged. This is not your first holiday without your child or your parent, and you're trying to maybe do things differently, figure out a different way that might work better for you. So I hope you'll tune in and listen, and listen with an open heart. Be willing to consider doing it differently. Okay? So the first thing that I want to talk about is, number one, I think it's super important, and I know that when I say this, some people are like, well, duh, Kreed. But I want you to think, again, be beneath the surface level of this, right? And that is the power of your reality, of facing that reality, the power of no longer fighting that reality. And I tend to see this more with estranged parents that really are in a place of suffering, and oftentimes are in that place of, I just can't believe this is happening to me. I can't believe they're doing this to me. How can things ever change? How could I ever face a holiday without my children? And things like that. I think that we have to get to a place where we can say, okay, this is my reality. I am an estranged parent, or I am an estranged adult child. And as much as it sucks, as much as I hate it, as much as I don't like it, as much as I want it to be different, the fact remains, I am estranged. So what am I going to do to move forward? This is where I'm at. In this moment, I cannot change the fact that I am estranged. And the longer that I beat my head against the wall, the longer that I make wishes that things were different, the longer that I sit in the seat of being the victim, the longer I sit in the seat of, the questioning, the why, what did I do to deserve this, and things like that, the longer the suffering is going to happen, and the longer it's going to take to come out of this. Now, again, in case you're just listening to this episode and this podcast for the very first time, I am not saying that these feelings and thoughts, that you should not be having them. It is inherent as an estranged person that you will feel these things. And that is okay. There is a place and time for those feelings. However, when those thoughts and feelings begin to take over your life, and you get stuck and you cannot move beyond them, you cannot move out of them, that is then when it becomes a problem, right? And that is what I'm talking about today. I'm not talking about those who found themselves estranged over this last week or of this last month. You are in the throes of the shock and the what have yous and the wherefores and, oh my gosh, my world's turned upside down, I don't know what to do. All of those things that you're feeling, if that is where you find yourself today, then that's all normal. Not pleasant, but it's all normal. However, if your estrangement is a little bit older than super recent, then there's value in sitting back and saying, how much of this am I allowing to control my life? And please remember that we can only control us. We cannot control other people. We can't change other people. We can only control our own self and change ourselves. So you are in control of that. Most people don't know, well, I say most, many people don't know how to come out of that. They need, some direction. They need some guidance. They need to, hear somebody say, well, what worked for me was this, that, or the other thing. So it's not something that I think that everybody is born with, and you're like, okay, I find myself in this shock system, and now I'm in victimhood, and now I'm going to do this to move out of it. People don't, that's not who we are as humans. Maybe enlightened humans can do that, but most of us, for the most part, 98% of the population, we don't know how to do that. When we find ourselves in a crisis, it's just, we don't. So, however, in order to get out of that, you have to make you have to become aware of it. You have to have a sense of curiosity of, how can this be different? How can I move out of this? How can I change this? And by how can I change this does not mean how can I force someone else to do something so that it changes for me. That's not what I'm talking about. So we need to get into reality. We need to face where we're at and stop expending energy on fighting against that. Because fighting against it it's like a truck stuck in the mud. You're spinning your wheels. You're getting nowhere. You're not going to get anywhere. In order to get out of the mud, I don't know if you've ever seen a truck that is stuck in the mud. Sometimes people use, a piece of wood to stick under it to get some traction and be able to pull out of the mud. That's what I'm talking about, right? That sense of curiosity is that piece of wood, that awareness of how can I do things differently. So we have to face where we're at. That's first and foremost. The second piece is focusing on if you're faced with the holidays and you're like, oh my gosh, we're supposed to go to Uncle John and Aunt Sue's house, and the 15 million cousins are going to be there, and all of their people, and everybody's going to want to know where little Joey is at, and they don't know we're estranged, and oh my God, how am I going to explain this? And then you start to fret over what to tell others. Should I go because then I'll have to face questions, or should I not go and then I don't get the benefit of being around family at the holidays? That's something to evaluate for yourself. My policy is always the power of honesty. Now, that being said, there's also, as Brene Brown says, there are people who earn the right to hear your story, and there are people who don't. And just because someone is a relative does not necessarily mean that they're entitled to hear all the ins and outs of your estrangement story. So my suggestion is to consider those people who you might meet with at a holiday gathering. Who are those people who've earned a right to hear your story? And when I say earn the right to hear your story, I mean they are kind and compassionate to you. They are truly concerned about you, and they're not in it just to hear the latest gossip to be able to go down to, go into the next room and start talking to 15 other people about your story. People who are truly concerned and care about you will hold that information close to their chest and not be off sharing it with other people. So consider who those people may be, and consider the value of being able to get some of this stuff off of your chest and sharing it with others. There is something therapeutic about being able to share your story. And so I definitely encourage that. As far as what to tell other people, do you walk into the house that's got, 30 people in it, and you say, hey everyone, so great to see everybody. By the way, little Joey's not coming because we're estranged. No, that's not what I'm saying. If someone comes up and asks you, Hey, where's Joe? Where's Joey? Not sure. He's probably off with his wife's family. And if they look at you like, what do you mean you don't know? This is your kid, right? He comes every year. You can simply say, at this time we're estranged. I'm not sure where he's at or what he's doing. And turn around and walk off. Go do something different. Go talk to someone else, right? If they follow you or they insist and kind of, corner you later and say, hey, what do you mean you guys are estranged? When did that happen? What's going on? How come I didn't know? That's when I would say, now's not the time and place to talk about this. I appreciate your concern, but now's not the time and place to talk about it. And I hope that you'll appreciate my privacy and turn around and walk off. People by nature are curious when it comes to, especially in a family and family dynamics, wanting to know who's on first and who went where and who said what. And so I think it's important to recognize that. It's natural. It's a sense of curiosity that most of us have. And to not necessarily think that they're coming at you with daggers and, they're just seeking out information to be harmful and hurtful to you. Sometimes our interactions with people can determine what action they take next, how we interact with people. So consider that. Sometimes when we can come across as just being very matter of fact and stern in holding that boundary, same thing for adult children. If someone comes up to you and says, hey, where's your mom? She's always here. Why isn't she here this Thanksgiving? Or why aren't you coming to Thanksgiving? Right? I'm sorry at this, Mom and I are currently estranged and I don't feel comfortable being there at Thanksgiving this year. Happy to stop by on Saturday and, maybe have a piece of pie with you or share some leftovers if that's something that might interest you. But, this year I won't be there. And if they say, well, why? Well, come on, you've got to come. It's Thanksgiving. Everybody's going to be there. See, I really would appreciate you honoring my decision. Right? And just don't get into arguing with them. Don't get into trying to explain yourself to death, all of these things, because it's generally not helpful. It generally is just going to perpetuate the inquiries. So the more that you can be very direct, but kind, not sarcastic when you say it, there's a difference in saying, Mom and I are currently estranged and I don't feel comfortable being at Thanksgiving this year, versus, well, that crazy ass mom of mine, we're not speaking and I'm not showing up anywhere she's at. There's a difference. And when you can just be matter of fact, hold your boundary, be kind in its delivery and presentation, most people will be respectful of that. Okay? Another way to cope with the holidays, something I had to do in my family at one point in time, and it was over an estrangement, but it also happened to be, there were a lot of other family dynamics involved with it. But it was the first Christmas that I found myself, and Thanksgiving, where I was not in communication with my mom and dad and my sister. And it spun me out. I did not know how to do Thanksgiving and Christmas without family, because we had traditions and that's what we did. Even when I was married, we might switch up holidays or, go to one family in the morning and one family in the evening kind of thing. We were always with family. And so this year, and there were a period of about, there were a period of many years there that we were not able to be together on holidays. It was really hard, and I had a really hard time coming out of the traditions. And when I was estranged from my children, my daughters, that first Christmas without them, I did not put up a tree. I did not decorate. I did not go to stores. I did not engage with anyone in any way, shape, or form that had anything to do with holiday spirit of anything. And it was awful. It was really, really, it was really terrible. And if I had it to do over again, some of these things that I'm going to suggest to you today are some of the things that I wish I had done starting that first year. So when I was estranged from my family, instead of going to family Thanksgiving, my little nuclear family with my partner and my 2 daughters, we went to the movies on Thanksgiving. And I remember thinking, this is so utterly bizarre. Like, I felt like I was doing something wrong because I was going to see a movie at a movie theater on Thanksgiving. So I'm telling you that because doing things when you have traditionally done things in a traditional way, and you have these traditions and things that you do every year, when you step out of that, it feels bizarre. It feels like something is wrong. It feels like, oh my God, this is not normal. I don't like this. I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want anything to do with it. And I suggest trying to push through that, especially if you're able to, if you have a partner, a spouse, or you have a good friend that you're able to do something different with that understands your story and understands why you're not with family. I think it's really important to try to push through that discomfort to do something different so that you can begin to establish new norms and in a way of being in the world that doesn't seclude you from everyone. So we went, like I said, to the movies. We went to the movies on Christmas. After we had our little nuclear Christmas with the nuclear family, then we went and went to the movies that afternoon instead of being with family. And again, very weird kind of thing, right? A lot of estranged parents and kids who maybe don't have children of their own go on trips, go on a cruise, or they go, out of country where maybe the holiday celebrations aren't as big as they are here in the States or things like that. And that's an idea, renting, a VRBO kind of thing, Airbnb out in the middle of nowhere, up in the mountains where people aren't going to be there, and you can go kind of have your own little thing. So those are all ideas and things that you could do to do something different. Another thing to do is to be of service to others. Go help, serve a meal for the homeless. Go help, out at a homeless shelter or a center for women and children. Try to think of things in ways that you can be a volunteer. It really helps us when we are thick in the middle of our sorrow and our grief. When we're able to give to others, it really kind of helps us to put things into perspective, and it gives us that feel good, that all the feel good hormones that we would normally get by being with family at the holidays, we can get in other ways, other healthy ways, and you're being of service to others, and you're helping to brighten someone else's day. And I think that is huge. Senior citizen centers and things like that are huge, where they don't, people don't have family that aren't with them. So there are other things that are potentials and ways that you can give back to others at a time of year when there are many other people who are lost and alone as well. And then finally, I think the piece that I want to talk about last is, and I know that this is going to probably sound really counterintuitive, but I think this is a great time of year to start a gratitude practice. Hear me out. Hear me out. I believe I've talked about this in the past. When my partner of 10 years left, and I was in the fetal position on the floor, distraught and not knowing what to do with myself or my life, I had a very good friend of mine who insisted that I start a gratitude practice. And I told her flat out, the very first time she mentioned it to me, I was like, I don't have one thing that I'm grateful for. And she wasn't going to hear it. And she said, I want you to write down 3 things before you go to bed tonight that you're grateful for. And I told her, I screamed at her, as a matter of fact, on the phone, I'm not grateful for anything. Why would I be grateful for anything in this position? She left me, and this relationship was my life, and it's over, and I just on and on and on about all the things that, wasn't right in my life. And she heard all that, and then she said, and I want you to write down 3 things that you're grateful for when you go to bed tonight. And actually, I think she said, I want you to write down 5 things. And she kept on, and she kept on, and she kept on. She didn't say anything about all the things that I had said. All she kept repeating over and over again was, I want you to write down these things before you go to bed. I want you to write down these things that you're grateful for before you go to bed. And so finally I just said to her, fine, if it will get you to just shut up, I will write a gratitude list tonight. And I was pissed. I was so mad at her, I couldn't see straight. I was like, how dare you expect me to find anything to be grateful for in the middle of this? I remember feeling so livid. And so that night, I grabbed a piece of paper and a pen, and I sat on my bed, and I thought to myself, what the hell am I grateful for? And I sat there for a while before I could come up with 3 things that I was grateful for. And those 3 things were my bed, my pillows, and at that time, because it was a partner that left me, I said my kids. Those were 3 things that I was grateful for. That's all I could see to be grateful for in the midst of my misery and turmoil. And the next day, she asked me to report on it, and I told her, and she said, excellent. Tonight I want you to write 5 things you're grateful for, because you only came up with 3 tonight, or last night. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this. This is stupid. This is ridiculous. And she's, again, over and over and over again, she just kept repeating the same thing. And so that night I went to bed and I wrote down 5 things. And the next night. And she did this to me for about a week. And then I just continued on my own. And that turned into what then was known as my daily good list. And it eventually got up to, I think, 13 things that I was grateful for every day. And that practice, while it didn't bring my partner back, it did not restore that relationship, that practice turned into something that I did 365 days a year for a solid 6 years. Every year, every day, I wrote a gratitude or a good list. And then I eventually started putting that on my personal Facebook page. And so people would start commenting on that. And it got to a place where I started actively looking every day for something to put on my good list. And it changed my focus. It changed my focus from poor, pitiful me, my life is over, how can I possibly go on, to that waitress smiled at me when she brought my food to me. Oh my gosh, that beautiful little blossom on the bush, wasn't that just beautiful, that single little blossom, to, oh my gosh, that person let me in when I was trying to merge into traffic, to, wow, the power bill was $10 less than last month. Those were the things that I was looking for every day. And that's what would go on my good list. And it turned me around. It turned my focus, and I was able to start focusing on the good things that I was having in my life and experiencing. And by default, it's like the universe brings you what you focus on. right? And so by default, things started happening in my life that I never could have predicted, that grew my good list every day. And there were times when my list was much longer than 13, but I reduced it down to 13 and then just started adding them, and I would apply them to the next day and things like that, where that's what my main focus was every day. Doesn't mean that I never felt sad or that I never longed for that relationship again. No, of course I did. But it did not overtake my life. So I think for this month, what I would invite you to consider is to start your own good list and write your good list every day and share it with someone or several someones, people that you trust, right? People that are kind and compassionate to you. And if you don't have people in your life like that and you're a member of my online support group for estranged moms, then I encourage you to share that there. But let it begin to shift things for you. And then maybe by the time, I realize we're just a few weeks away from Thanksgiving, but with a daily practice like this, maybe eventually you can show up at Thanksgiving or Hanukkah celebrations or Christmas celebrations, and instead of focusing on the differences that you have with people, maybe you can focus on the commonalities, right? We've all suffered grief. We've all suffered loss. Might not look exactly like ours, like the one that you're going through right now, but we've all experienced those things. And this practice of turning something really hard and difficult and trying to cultivate gratitude for the good things that do show up in your life helps you to begin to shift, do what I call that quarter turn, to be able to look at things a bit differently. And that's what saved me, right? That, and along with, eventually I got into therapy and things like that, but it was that daily good list. And so on this month of Thanksgiving, of giving thanks for things in our life, I extend the invitation to you to begin searching each day for things that you're grateful for. Whether it's the fact that you woke up this morning, whether it's the fact that you have able to have coffee every morning, that you're still able-bodied, that you're able to open the front door and see something beautiful on your porch or out the back door on the patio and hear the birds singing. Whatever the case may be, we can all find something good in our day. And I invite you to focus on that as you begin to consider these changes and ways that you might shift the way that you've experienced the holidays, right? I know it's a hard time of year. It's difficult. No one likes to be alone at the holidays when everyone else and all their, everyone and their brother and sisters are getting together, and you're seeing and hearing all these wonderful things from other people, and you're like, I'm not experiencing that. I'm left out. It's really hard. I understand that. I know that pain intimately. I also know what it takes to shift out of that. And that's the invitation for you as you step into this holiday season and begin to navigate a difficult time of year. So that's my invitation this year. I hope that you will consider it with an open heart. Until next time. This brings this episode to a close. I hope that this time together was time you feel well spent and that you are able to find some takeaway nuggets to help you on your journey, wherever you may be on your estrangement and reconciliation path. If you feel you've received something helpful or positive from this podcast, please consider following us, sharing this podcast with others, leaving a positive review, perhaps entertaining becoming a guest on our show, or following us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok under the same name, The Estranged Heart. As a reminder, there is an online support group on Facebook. If you are a estranged mom who identifies as being spiritual and approaches estrangement with a sense of curiosity rather than blame and judgment, and desire to do inner self-work and reflection, please seek us out. We can be found at facebook.com/Estranged Mothers Support Group. And lastly, if you are an estranged parent or an estranged adult child and would like to have your story shared on the podcast, anonymously or not, please reach out to me via email at theestrangedheart@gmail.com.